Hello, everyone, and welcome to Common Time Podcast, where we bring you world-class professional development for music educators straight to your phone. I'm David Clemmer.
And I'm John Pasquale.
And we are your hosts and fellow music educators. In each episode, we will interview a guest who is an expert in their field, here to provide us insight, strategies, and inspiration to help you elevate your ensemble. Our guest today is Jamal Duncan, who is the Associate Director of Bands at Arizona State University. And we're talking with Jamal today about a Facebook post that he made a couple of weeks ago that had a tremendous response. And I'm going to go ahead and read that in just a moment. But first, let's say hello to Jamal. Welcome, Jamal.
Hello. Good to be with you all today.
Thanks so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. So this question, I noticed it on Facebook. And the moment I read the question, it resonated with me. And I assumed that it was going to do the same with others, but the kinds of comments, there were lots of different ones. But the Facebook post was this: your words, not mine, your words. Unpopular thought. Many of our students are in love with competition, not music. It isn't their fault. We made them this way. So I read that and immediately was like, you know what? I would like to talk to Jamal about this and just see like what he was thinking and then some of the responses. And then maybe we just talk it out and see where we go with that. And we created a couple of questions. John, why don't you get us started and we'll go from there.
Indeed. Thanks, David. Hi, Jamal. It is so good to see you. Thanks for being here. Hey, so I'm just going to start things off by just asking, are there advantages of fostering a competitive mindset in a band program for both the students and the ensemble as a whole?
100%. I agree that competition is important. As a lot of the responses on Facebook, there's competition involved in so much of what we do in and outside of music that it's kind of foolish to think that there is no world in which that doesn't exist. Right. So I think it is important. I think the concern that I have is that we as the adults in the room, we as the people who are tasked with being responsible for these young adults, have to be really careful about what we're asking them to do and the parameters under which we're asking them to do those things. And so, yeah, I think competition is great. I think competition can be really healthy, but I've also seen it kind of trend to the unhealthier aspects. And that's kind of what sparked me to just at like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, just put some thoughts on Facebook.
Yeah, no, I saw it immediately, and the comments were rolling. Which it's a good conversation. It's a conversation we need to have.
It's an important one to have. Absolutely, it is.
Because, like you said, and I agree. I think competition is important, and there's no aspect of our life that isn't affected in one way or another by competition. Some type of competitive level. And that discussion is, where do we find ourselves on this spectrum of, this is me talking with my hands as a conductor. I shouldn't do that on a podcast, I suppose. But so I have a question then. In your opinion, how can directors balance this pursuit of excellence, we'll call it, with the risk of students becoming overly focused on winning and rankings?
Yeah, I think it's the way that we present these things. I think that a quest for excellence is something that I want every director to have. And the discussion becomes, how do we manifest that quest for excellence? And I'll just say at the beginning, one of the things that initially came from the post was maybe a sense of some people that I was talking directly about competitive marching band. And while I think that is part of it, I think that sometimes we carry competition too far in all aspects of music making and just in the lives of middle and high school students, period. So I think it's how we frame our program. And so, like, I think when you step back and you're at maybe a 30,000 feet high bird's eye view of your program, and you're looking at the events that are planned, you're looking at your student schedule, I think those things kind of tell your priorities. And I think there's nothing wrong with any one competition. But there are some schools, there are some programs that I think delve too heavily into that. And if you are competing every weekend, I don't know how we then turn the focus around and say it's not about the competition when that's all we're doing, or when that is such a large part of the program. And so that's the concern to me. I don't think that competition is bad in any way. It's just we as the adults in the room have to know when enough is enough. And I
Right.
think sometimes it's hard for us to see that because we're in it, on the ground level, and don't get to zoom back and look at the totality of, number one, the expectations that we're asking for our students, which also deals with the demands that we're putting on ourselves, and how that looks from a casual outside observer.
Right. No,
Indeed.
absolutely.
So then, Jamal, as a follow up to that, when competition becomes a primary focus in a band program, from your perspective, what are some negative effects that you're seeing?
Well, I think to me, one of the things that I saw, and I saw this at, when I was at the University of Arkansas before, and here at Arizona State, I think there is a sense of, there are many students, if we're talking about the marching band aspect, there are many students who come from these large high school marching programs where they do a lot of competitions. There seemed to be a sense of many of them that there is nothing that they can learn from the college marching band, or there's nothing that
Hmm.
the college can do for them that their high school hasn't already accomplished. And I know that because I've had students tell me that directly to my face. So that has to be coming from somewhere. But I also think that there are, at a place like Arizona State University, where there are tens of thousands of students in residence on campus, and we do have a really active non-music major concert band. Um, we should see threefold many of those students on campus playing music because it's something that they love and enjoy. And so many of them get to our campus and say, well, that was part of my past. I don't want to look at this trumpet or trombone or clarinet anymore. I've done enough with that. And so those are the things that are in my mind telling me, that there may be an issue. There also seems to be another outgrowth of that, is just students who don't seem to be, motivated internally, like to encourage them to practice, or to encourage them to do the things that they should just be doing. You have to almost gamify it, or attach points to it, or say, if you don't do this, then that happens. And so I think that says that there must be not as much joy, not as much passion for just the music making that we think the students have. And again, it's when you're in your program and you're on the ground level, it's hard to see that until some years have passed, or till somebody else shares that perspective of what they're seeing from students who come from certain programs.
Right. This is. It reminds me. We have a colleague. We authored a book together, John and I, with a colleague from Germany.
Mhm.
And I asked him at some point during the process of writing that book. I asked him. So his name's Christoph Breitag. Christoph, in your mind, how would you what is it that you would consider to make you like you feel successful? Like you're a successful band director. What if I ask you that? What is it? And he didn't hesitate. His instant was like, if my students are playing their instrument 10 years after they left me, it
Mhm.
was instantaneously. And I immediately thought, I wonder if I asked that question to a sampling of directors in the United States, how would it be similar or different? And then maybe that's for another podcast, but it kind of ties in here because why are we doing it? Why are we doing what we're doing? Are we teaching music? And how is music education impacted by our approach as directors? Because your quote said it. We did it. They
Mhm.
didn't. Like the programs are what they are because we've allowed it to be that way or we've created it that way. It's our choice. And I came from, before moving back to Texas, I was in Kentucky. And there are two, it's a pretty highly competitive state in the marching band world. And there are two programs there that over time, at some point, the director said, enough's enough. We're going to do marching band like colleges do and just do a show, maybe a couple of them, and focus on just playing our instruments and you use the word joy, just creating more joy about music. And it stuck with me because most people, that's like, well, I can't do that. My parents will push back, or the students aren't going to want to do it anymore because competition is what's driving them, which is, I'm sure, where this quote comes from. Really, or your post was like, look, what is driving them? And we're the ones that are clearly at the front of the bus. So how does that, we're the one leading the charge. How does that work? So my question is how can directors encourage healthy competition that motivates students without creating a toxic or stressful environment? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's program to program, director to director. I mean, you are the educational leader of your program, and you know your students. And part of it, and that what I meant is we've done it to ourselves, or whatever the quote was, is that we've built these things, and once you build it, there's an expectation that you will sustain. And the minute you decide to do less or talk about doing less, there becomes pushback from administration because we've always done it this way. This is one of the hallmarks of our school and the prides of our program. And so I think that becomes a thing that is concerning. But when you look at the amount of time, the amount of financial resources, and all that go into these things, at some point there becomes a discussion of, can my students and our community support these kinds of things? Because there's selling popcorn because we have to buy props, or because we've got to buy a new tarp, or because of all of these things. And at certain point, all of that is done on the backs of our students, because most of us don't come from school districts or programs where the money is ever flowing. So it becomes, if you want these things, you have to generate the revenue. And so it becomes a vicious cycle of just pushing demands on the students, car washes, bottle drives, all of those things. And then we as the directors have to be the one that manages all of this, and it takes a big toll, I think, physically and emotionally on us as the directors of those programs. It's such a multifaceted thing that I think there's no one quick fix to it, but you also have to look at your students and say, is this the best for them? And again, I'm not saying that competition is inherently bad. I'm not saying having rigorous performance schedules is bad, but you just have to take a really good look at what's going on. Like, even on the concert aspect here at ASU, one of the things that we had been doing for my first year or two that was kind of an expectation is like there were 4 concerts a semester for our best players. They would do like 2 with the band, 2 with the orchestra, and then switch rotations. And at some point, it was like, well, this makes sense because now the 2 students get 2 with each experience, and it's even for everyone. But it was like, when is too much too much? So there was the conscious decision to go from 4 concerts a semester to 3 concerts a semester. Now, yes, that means somebody might get 2 band and only 1 orchestra, but then maybe the next semester it evens out, and we try to work it on that end. But I just think it takes looking, and there's the American culture, I think, is one of do more, push to capacity. And I think we are not yet coming to grips of what that nonstop grind or hustle does once we're out of that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned mental health, emotional health, those kinds of things that are at the forefront now. People are talking about it more than they have more than they were 10 years ago.
It's a good thing to talk about it, for sure.
It is good that we are talking about that, but we have seen, like the push toward, the competitive side of things. Like I'm from Texas, and I live in Texas now, and our honor band system is rigorous, and people that are, they'll record 3 or 4 extra concerts to get the best take to submit. And then this thing's going on. And some of the literature is worked on for, significant amounts of time. And then the minute that's over, could you put equal level of literature in front of those students and then being able to perform that? 9 times out of 10, it's not. They've just worked at it so long that it becomes a process. And the students, I don't know, I haven't interviewed all the students, but I get feedback that the students do thrive off of this process, this desire to win honor band or be placed in the honor band, to figure out where they are in the honor band system. And I am, when I first got back to Texas, which is in 2016, after I'd been away from the state for a while, it was a question that immediately I was like, is it healthy? Not is it right or wrong or indifferent? Is it healthy for the students? And I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. That's why we're talking today, honestly, because it's a question. And you just mentioned it. Is it better for the students to have 4 concerts a year or 3? Probably 3. We know that they're being pulled and pushed in all of the different ways, and then we place this on them. My question is, why are we doing that to them and ourselves? Like, that's really what's happening. And your post really resonated with me because it put the finger, like, we're looking in the mirror, like we can see all these things happening, but we are the ones looking in the mirror going like, okay, well, we did this. Like, we decided, what this is like. So,
And
yeah, go ahead.
And so I think, you look at a state like Texas, I think that's a great example. There are so many students studying music in the state of Texas with really great teachers.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes time to decide who's going to be in the all-state band or who's going to make the all-region band or the all-area list or all of that, you have to have a way that lets us arrive at these are the players who are most deserving to get into this experience. And so I think there naturally has to be some kind of process, and that does get built upon competition. But I think as equally as it is that it could be just everybody says that, well, let's just leave it like it is. Let's just not change the process. There could be some tweaks around the fringes of that do make it a little bit easier. And I think one of the things that is hard for us as educators to square ourselves against is that, for better or worse, our quality as an educator is in many cases determined by what our students are able to produce. So it's, this year I got 5 students into the all-state band. Next year, can it be 6? And it's, and people build these reputations on this program is always going to place well in all-state, or this program is always going to do well in competitions. And so I think the problem is, so then as a teacher, as the person in charge of that, we just say, well, these are the things that need to be done to operate at this high level. And in many cases, our students love us and respect us so much that no matter what we ask them to do, they will do it. And so it's like, well, this person I trust, I'm all in. If they're telling me this is the way, then this is the way. And I think that in many cases that works while they're in that small bubble of high school. But the minute that they step onto a college campus and can make their own choices, and no one is telling them what they have to do, and it's them who are going to have to motivate them to get out of bed every morning, to go to class and take part in the things that they want to do, then it's very interesting to look at those same students once those guardrails are taken away. And I think that's the thing that I see a lot from the college band director side. And also I work as the assistant director of undergraduate studies here at ASU. So I'm also just talking with students about things that are troubling them, issues that they're working through, just trying to have them make that successful leap from high school to college. And there just seems to be this recurring theme around these kind of issues. And it's not just, and I don't mean to say that it's just around music making. I think there are all kinds of things in
Sure.
the high school and in the middle school, all of the AP and IB testing, all of the travel sports teams that we have, where it's like students don't ever have an opportunity to sit with their own thoughts and collect themselves because they're going from thing to thing to thing. And what happens when all of those are gone and they can choose how they chart the next path forward, how they, move the next
Mhm.
path forward.
Well, I can tell you, Jamal, I mean, we are both coming from institutions of higher education that have large student bodies, right? And we both
Mhm,
teach at premier music schools in the world. And kind of like you, I sit and talk to prospective students hundreds every year.
mhm,
And it's either they love the competition part or they want to do something else and
mhm,
they are just trying to figure out exactly what that is.
mhm,
And I think that it's our job to try to mitigate and course correct. And I think we are at a turning point, both in terms of how competition is affecting mental health and
mhm,
affecting them through their life journey, but also too, how is that going to impact the arts?
mhm.
And
Sure.
so I truly, when I first started teaching, I started my career teaching middle school in Texas, and all I wanted to do was be honor band,
Mhm,
right? And honor band, honor band, honor band. I came close one time, and man, but then I was thinking, how many of those students are still playing their instrument? Your post, whenever David sent it to me, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see these comments. This is going to be awesome.
mhm,
But now that I'm teaching college, my job, and I teach about 1,000 students a term. 99% of them are non music majors, right?
mhm,
And so my philosophy is totally different. My job
mhm,
now is to make sure that I teach students to love music and to patron art for the rest of their life. That's my success rate. It doesn't
mhm,
matter about the quality of halftime show we performed yesterday, or, I mean, it does matter, but in the scheme of life, it doesn't matter, right? It's about
mhm,
who's going to who's going to love art and support it forever, and that's going
mhm,
to be good for those that are studying music and those, it's a cyclical thing that we're all trying to figure out. So there's a question that actually comes to this point. So,
mhm.
at, as you said before, competition is not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily good. There's a wide thing in there. How does a competitive mindset impact students' long-term love for music and their musical growth outside of school? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the competitive mindset is something that is important, something that will lead to success down the road. Every job interview is a competition. If you're a music major, every audition you take is a competition. I mean, competition is baked in to what we do, but I think there has to be a framing around, am I better than I was the day before? When
Mm.
I taught
Yeah.
when I taught in the Lansing public schools, my middle school band was never going to be the middle school band that was going to be able to play on stage at the Michigan Music Conference. But we were going to be better year end over year out. Like every year we were going to try to improve, and I'm going to try to do the best for those students that is in their control and in their grasp. So I think it's also understanding what our programs are and what our programs aren't.
Okay.
And not every band program should be trying to compete and do the things that the other band program down the road is doing, because the clientele is different, the ability of financial resources is different, the amount of administrative support is different, and I don't think we see those things. It's just, well, if they can do this type of show, this has to be the direction that we move into. And I mean, we see this in college bands too. I mean, I am looking on Facebook to see what colleagues of mine are programming, and there's that, oh well, if their band can play that, then my band should be able to play that. And then I just have this little thought in the back of my head when I'm looking at repertoire or thinking about things that I want to do or plans that I want to implement. It'll be like, yes, my band can play this piece, but they will not like who I have to become to get them to the point where they can play this piece.
Well stated.
and
Very well
and
stated.
and so that's the whole thing. It's like, I have I sit and I'd love to do this piece, and it's like the things that I would have to do to get X piece ready are antithetical to the joy-filled things that I believe. And again, I think my students currently would probably say that not every minute of rehearsal is jokes and laughs, because there is a time to roll up your sleeves and do the work. But I think I also, especially in year 5 with this band, kind of know where the limits are, know where I can push, and then understand that if I decide to push on this piece, there has to be a natural relaxation somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
so just a little, sorry to ramble, but I mean,
No, no.
that's
No, that
just kind
certainly
of,
resonates,
yeah,
Jamal.
yeah.
Like when you said about you were talking about not comparing yourself or the group to others. Like for me with the University of Michigan marching band, I never watch other marching band shows ever. They don't matter to me. What matters to me is what my students are going to enjoy. What's the artistic experience? Is it going to engage with the audience? Is it going to be artistically fulfilling? Does it meet the mission? I mean, I just don't ever pay attention to what anyone else is doing because it doesn't matter, right? So how like you just said that, I think was so well stated, that it's just what is your students getting out of this, and how do you give them the best possible experience? I think that you're so right on this.
Yeah, and when you talk about that too, like this has come up in a couple of different podcasts, being student centered, making decisions based off of what our students are going to experience. And this, I've never heard it phrased like you just said it. Like you just turn the mirror on you. Like the person I'm going to have to become to play that piece is not going to be a good experience for them.
Mhm.
So it's not that, yeah, we can, but should we? You
Right,
can play the
right,
piece, but
right.
should we? And like for me, I saw a quote a long time ago. I think it was Bela Bartok or something like competitions are for horses, not for artists. And it kind of stuck with me. I think it was Bartok. It was like a meme or something. I'm sure I saw on Facebook.
Mhm.
But anyways, like we know that competition is going to be here. John and I have been heavily involved in competitive marching band. We've taught DCI together for 10 years with the Cavaliers, and we have, I don't know, 4 or 5 championships and Jim Ott, high brass awards and that stuff.
Mhm.
And that's very fulfilling. It is very fulfilling. But there was a difference, I think, as I look back. Like the students that were involved with that made the decision to be there. They
Mhm.
paid
Mhm.
money to be there, and that was their goal. They want to compete in this almost like athletic type event called
Mhm.
DCI, which is fine.
Mhm.
Did we find ways to work on art? We did. We did find ways to be more artistic with, especially how we approach the Cavaliers, but and try to tie that to music education. Like we worked really hard to try together our approach to music education, applying that to DCI and getting them to think more like artists as opposed to who plays the fastest, the highest, the loudest, whatever.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I look back now and I still have to ask myself, and I hope all of us that are listening and that are doing this and impacting students, what do we value?
Mhm.
Like, what are we
Yeah.
valuing most? And how are we portraying that to our students? What are they seeing from us? Are they seeing a true love for music and the joy that listening to music brings to me and making music brings to me? Or are they seeing like, here's the checklist for the marching band season, or here's the checklist for, it doesn't even have to be competitive marching band. It could be
Mhm.
just choose your topic.
Right.
Like, is music education, are we really teaching music, or are we teaching something else using music as sort of the vehicle?
Mhm.
And I don't think that's a good or bad either, because I do think we
Right.
have to
Right.
teach the whole child. Like we are
Mhm.
teaching a lot of different things. We're teaching values and we are teaching, character. But at some point, where does it fall in there?
Right. Right.
You know?
And I think there is a situation for the both and scenario. I mean, as music teachers, um, we are probably, as far as the academic setting, we are the teacher who will be with those students for the longest. They normally get a new English teacher after a year or after a semester. They normally change their math teacher. But in many cases, the music teacher will be there with them for the 4 years of high school or the 3 years of middle school or junior high. And so I do think that it is important to understand that there are ways to relate what we do in music um, to a successful life beyond and outside of music, because in essence what music is, it is a group activity. It is, I think, the best of what we this term community can be when done the right way. And so yes, there is a reason to have competition involved, but to what extent? There is a reason to have so many other kind of offshoots that will prepare our students. I mean, music is great with time management skills. It's great with organization. The compromises that we have to make in rehearsal show our students how we react on our feet and how important those skills are. I think all of the things that we do in music are a great microcosm of how to be successful outside. But again, for me, the question just is, when is enough enough? And I
Indeed.
think, and again, I think it's one of those things that is really important that we all look inside for, because I thought about that meme where it's like the three Spider-Man standing in a little circle and they're all pointing at each other. And it's like, well, I understand what you're talking about, but that's those people. That's not ever what I would do in my program. And I think it sometimes takes having a colleague that you trust, look at what you're doing and look at how things are going and give honest assessments about, from an outsider's perspective, it looks like A, B, and C, where maybe you thought it was 1, 2, and 3. Again, I'm
Yeah.
not saying competition is bad, but how we as adults put our pressures on younger children sometimes is not a positive experience.
So then,
Yep.
Jamal, just to kind of go off of that, how can directors prepare students to handle both the a success and failure in competitive settings, and then how can they foster personal growth with inside of that?
Yeah, I think it's how you frame what success is. One of the things when I got here to ASU, um, one of the big mantras of our school is, it is our job to make you successful, and you determine for you and for your own self what that success is. And so I think if if the mindset is, we need to have this minimum score, or we need to come in, no, we want to be close to this school because they're the peer that we're trying to target. I think that's kind of the thing that I'm worried about. I think the the growth is, are we better than we were at the last competition? Are we better as a unit, as a group, as a cohesive whole at the end of the season rather than the beginning of the season? And I mean, as you all both know really well, I mean, those judges scores are a snapshot of a very short amount of time, and they might have looked at something the wrong way or not caught the eye at the point that it was supposed. There's so many things. So it's we can't hold too much value of our self-worth or our program's worth based on, as much as we have these rubrics, it's not a, this is a 1 versus this is a 2. There's a lot of gray area in that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and so I think it's, for me, it's as small things of like horns. Our goal is going to be to get through this passage in La Fiesta Mexicana at the opening, where we are frack free. And that may never happen, but that doesn't mean you failed. If there's growth, that's great. Now the benefit of that is when we do that concert, it will be in a safe space of our auditorium, and there's nobody with pencils and papers ready to judge us, and there's no trophies at the end. So I think that it's not an apples to apples comparison, but I think, like you said, John, I don't worry about what other people are doing so much, and when I do, I check myself, and I was like, well, that might be great for X band, but not for my band, or not for my band at this time. And I don't want to ever put, we all have, I think, imposter syndrome to some stance. I don't want to put that feeling on my students, because I know that when my band has our concert on Wednesday, I'm lucky that our faculty peers come to that concert. And so Christopher Creviston is listening to what I have spent 7 rehearsals doing with his saxophones. And at the end of the day, there's something in me that says, well, I hope he feels that it's okay, but I can't put that onto the saxophones and make them feel under pressure, because that's not how we succeed. And that's the opposite of joy. So that might be wearing on me, but at a certain point, I can't take that and put the pressure that I feel on myself on our students.
Yeah.
And I think that's where sometimes it gets really hard. And luckily I have colleagues that are here and they check me regularly, like, breathe, relax, everything will be okay. Luckily my rehearsal room is right above his office. So when we get particularly rowdy, he hears it.
He knows what's up. That's funny.
Yes.
I love that you keep bringing this word joy back to the conversation. I don't think it's something we talk about enough. And I think even as directors, maybe we get lost in the weeds too. Mm-hmm. I would be curious, like, if you were to poll directors, like, are you feeling joy today? Did you feel joy after your rehearsal? Mm-hmm. Do you feel joy about just any level of, this is a job that you're committed to for your career and you're shaping students' lives. Are you doing so joyfully? And if you reframe it that way, it really does, and allow it to sink in. I feel like that could really impact the decisions and the choices that are going to be made for a program long term. I'm curious, like, in terms of like focusing on competition, do you feel that it affects the relationships that exist between a director and the students? And if so, how can directors maintain sort of a positive connection, knowing, like, going back to this joy idea, like, I would like to create this in this context, but we are going to have to go perform in front of people that do have pencils and paper.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's always, lead with kindness. I mean, in most cases, and this is, even as I say it, it's hard to wrap my head around this sometimes. In most cases, our students are doing the best that they can. I don't believe, at least in the students that I've encountered now at 3 or 4 different schools, nobody is coming to just waste your time. And if you are in one of these programs that do a lot of competition, your students are into it and they're doing it, I think, full-heartedly. And so I always want to start with, I don't think this student is operating at this level of proficiency just out of laziness. They're doing the best that they can, and maybe there's a way, maybe there's a strategy that I just don't know of yet to help them move to the next level. And again, part of that is as teaching the whole child, what you have is what you have. And so if we lose GE points for that, and we know that the student is doing the best, I mean, what else is there? I mean, we could, I guess, get more and more aggressive with us, but I've never seen that be productive or yield the results you want. It just adds more stress to you as the director. And I'll say, just as my other hot take of the of the podcast here, is that I think the number of people we have in our profession leaving these award-winning programs or deciding to do other things in the profession are showing that it's not from a joy-filled standpoint. I mean, teachers are already not paid enough. We have all kinds of external pressures on us, and then internal pressures that we put upon ourselves. If we're not, in a way, feeding our own joy and creativity, it can be just much easier to go do something else. At least we don't have then the administrators breathing down our back, or the band booster organization that's gone rogue. So I do think at some point our longevity in this career depends on a reframing of the interactions we have with our students, the demands that we place upon our students, and the demands that we place upon ourselves.
You know, it's interesting hearing you say that. By the way, I just want to
So
stand
well
up and
said.
slow clap. That was
I'm just like,
that was
take that one to the
fantastic.
bank. Yeah.
Well, but again, and I'll say, sorry to interrupt. Like,
No, please.
I don't think anything that I'm saying is profound or anything that you don't already know. It's just at a certain point, what we have to do as a profession is say it's okay to say these things. It is okay. You know, I'm starting to see, you know, these posts on Facebook where it's like this picture of your car in the parking lot at 11 o'clock at night isn't the flex you think it is. Like, I mean,
Right.
there are people who are starting to say, like, what is our quality of life if we're giving so much to these jobs where there's nothing left of us to give to ourselves? And so I think it's just, I hope that if nothing else, the post did seem to spur conversation in the, not whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, but to really look at where we are, look at the things that we are putting on our students and on ourselves to do, and try to find ways to make it work. Because otherwise we end up not having band directors who've been in the profession for 30 years and, you know, had this great track record of instilling young people to love music. You know, you start to get the round robin, and then all of the kind of the general wisdom of the profession starts to filter away.
Right.
You know, Jamal, too, this also should be for those of us that are teaching conducting students and also preparing students to go into this as their livelihood, right? My conducting students, I ask them while they are watching video footage from the rehearsals that they did before our lessons, and I asked them two questions in this order. How many times did you smile? And then my second question is, what went well?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me everything that went well first.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be shocked at how many have no list or maybe one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's immediately this. I said, no. We're not talking about anything negative. You cannot speak in any negatives for the next 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say something positive about yourself and about how the students reacted. And it forces them to recalibrate their thinking, right? But then again, I have to do that for my own rehearsals or the performances, or, you know, I mean, but I think how that you're saying it is so important for people to hear. There has to be joy. The whole point of music is to have fun doing it, to have fun listening to it, to have fun making it, to have fun. It's an enjoyable activity. If not, what are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
You know?
to the point, like if we are doing it in such a way that after 4, 5, 6 years of it, they want nothing to do with it. Well, I mean, we've missed our calling clearly. So I'm so glad that the post, I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, he's putting it out there. But like, you're right. The discussion was really positive, I think, of people questioning like, what are we doing and where are our students and where are we going next? Because like you said earlier in the conversation, like we're the ones that are, in control.
Yeah.
So,
John,
yeah.
I think what you said is so powerful to me because think about it. That's kind of what we're taught to do. I have a rehearsal with the Wind Symphony. My TA uploads a recording. I come down to my office. I turn on the recording. I take out a piece of paper and I write down everything that went wrong so that I can fix those things the next rehearsal. And there are times where I will catch myself and I'll joke around. I was like, "You obviously uploaded a different recording because this isn't my band. Like, did we really sound that good?" And I didn't notice, and I wasn't paying. And yes, we did sound that good because I was so
Mm.
into finding the mistakes, and I never got to tell them, "Wow, that sounds incredible," or "That was so much better than 2 rehearsals ago. Thank you for your work on that." I think
Right.
so. It's a reframing with myself personally as well, because again, I think we all feel the pressures of wanting successful performance, I mean, nobody wants to go to a competition and come in last or be like, "Oh, we got middle of the pack. That's great. We're having fun." Nobody sets out for that. But I think we also have to celebrate the incremental victories and the small things, because I think the more that the students see that, and I'm not talking about just a blindless false optimism,
Mm.
but students know when they've worked on something and they know when it's better than it was the day before. And if we never acknowledge that, what incentive does that give them to want to keep working? Because it's all a sense of, I don't want to let the group down. I don't want to let the teacher down. I don't want to let myself
Yeah,
down.
it's
And
true.
if the only one that's being happy or noticing that I'm doing work is me, then at some point, I mean, we
Right.
get tired of that.
And also, it's
Yeah.
important to remember it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Mhm.
I've been saying that quite a lot lately. It's a marathon. It's not a
Yeah.
sprint.
Jamal, man, we could talk about this. I'm loving this conversation. I
Me
could literally
too.
talk about this for hours because I think it has just so much value, and it's even enlightening me. Like, the idea of joy in everything we do, like making those choices, but especially for our students, we're trying to teach them music. If it's not from a joyful heart, where are we coming from? But I've gotten a message from my producer who says, "You're running over time. Let's get to it."
Okay.
But we have 2 questions that we typically ask everyone just to get some feedback. Do you have a book that has particularly inspired you in your teaching journey that you could share with our audience?
I have read Richard Floyd's books that are over here behind my head
Uh-huh.
somewhere. Of course, because you asked, the title is escaping me, but of music and music making,
Mhm.
or the art of making music, something like that. Those books have been really helpful to me, and I will tell you why, because they are more, in the way that I read them, more philosophical than they are, "These are the things that you can do to make sure your tubas are more in tune," or "These are the things that you can do to make sure there's better blend in your clarinets." While
Mhm.
all of that stuff is important, I think at some point those books kind of center me back to why this whole music thing was the thing that grabbed me when I first started. Because when I started as a clarinet player, I was terrible. I was not a good clarinet player, and I only did it because of my friends doing it. And at some point, it was like there was a teacher in 7th grade who showed me what this love of music was about, and from that point on I never looked back. So things that get me
Love it.
connected back to the spiritual emotional side are books that I tend to gravitate to.
I love it. And then, Jamal, how we end all of our podcasts. What is your favorite time signature?
Oh, I love a good 7/8. I do. I
People like
love set
7/8.
I
A
love
lot of
seven
people.
eight, and I will go as far as to say I also strongly dislike 3/4. So,
Oh,
and
Okay.
I have no good reasons for why, but 3/4 just is not enjoyable for me to conduct, and I there's no valid reason why.
it's all good. Well, unfortunately, the answer was common time. just from our perspective.
I get it.
No, we've actually had quite a few people say 7/8, like just the lilt of it, the way that it can be arranged.
Mhm.
Actually, Jerry Junkin, that was his immediate, like 7/8. I really like 7/8.
I'm in the cool kids club. I love it.
It's absolutely. Jamal, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an incredible conversation. Thank you for putting that out into the universe. Like that thought was thought-provoking for me. I hope it'll be for our listeners as well. I'm sure that it has to be after you listen to this and go, okay, what am I doing? What am I valuing? What is my why? And how am I relating that to kids? Man, it's such a great conversation to have. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for reaching out. It was great to talk to you all.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Jamal.
Well, that'll take care of it for today.
All right.
Okay, everyone, that's a wrap for this episode of Common Time Podcast. We hope you gained some valuable insights and inspiration to take back to your ensemble. New episodes of Common Time Podcast drop every Monday. We hope you enjoy the show. Please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more music educators just like you. And a special thanks to our wives, Jessica and Theresa, for keeping us organized enough to make this happen. Also, don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Common Time Podcast for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Keep making music and keep making a difference.